From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. We begin tonight with a runoff election in the South that will decide who controls the United States Senate. Votes are still being counted in Georgia, with Democrat Raphael Warnock leading one Senate race and Republican David Perdue holding a slight lead in the other. But those margins are razor thin. Let's go to CBS's Skylar Henry in Atlanta.
The eyes of the nation are on Georgia tonight, following the state's special elections to fill 2 Senate seats.
Today is the day. We're going to make it happen today.
Republicans David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler faced Democrats Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock. None got 50% of the votes in November, triggering automatic runoffs under Georgia law.
You can't complain if you don't vote.
More than 3 million Georgians voted early, shattering the state's record for total turnout in a runoff.
The future of the country is on the ballot here in Georgia today.
These races will determine which party controls the U.S. Senate. The GOP needs to win only one to maintain its majority. No serious problems were reported at polling locations here in Atlanta, but the FBI is investigating after election workers in 10 counties received email threats. Underscoring the importance of these elections, on Monday, President Trump and President-elect Biden were both in Georgia to campaign.
Vote. Make sure your voice is heard.
The whole world is watching the people of Georgia tomorrow.
Georgia election officials have warned that it could be days before all the votes are counted and a winner is declared. They also said there have been no reports of widespread fraud or other irregularities. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Atlanta.
Well, as in November, ballots cast today are being counted first before any early votes are tabulated. So it's going to be a long night, and military votes also still have to be counted, and that could take days. When Congress votes tomorrow to confirm the results of the 2020 presidential election, 2 Republican members of Montana's congressional delegation, Senator Steve Daines and Congressman Matt Rosendale, say they will support challenges to those results. MTN Chief Political Reporter Mike Dennison explains what that means and what they both do and don't have to say about it.
Confirming the electoral votes in a presidential election is usually a routine affair, but not Wednesday, when at least 140 Republican House members and a dozen GOP senators say they will support objections to the election results in a half-dozen so-called disputed states. When that happens, the House and Senate will debate each objection and vote on it. Those votes will most certainly fail, and Democrat Joe Biden will be officially confirmed as winner of the presidential election. Daines and his fellow objectors in the Senate say the 2020 election featured unprecedented allegations of voter fraud. They want to create a commission to investigate these allegations and then allow a state, if it chooses, to convene a special legislative session to change their presidential vote. Rosendale said Tuesday he will support challenges in some states, but didn't identify which ones. He also cited what he called widespread allegations of voter fraud and said challenging presidential election results is a precedent set earlier by Democrats. We asked both Daines and Rosendale to identify what they consider credible or unprecedented incidents of voter fraud or where it happened. They did not specifically reply. As for precedent, some Democrats in Congress have objected when Republicans won the presidential election in 2000, 2004, and 2016. The difference, however, is that in each of those years, we did not have a candidate like President Trump actively attempting to overturn the certified election results. Rosendale and Daines are essentially supporting that effort when no credible evidence has surfaced of any level of voter fraud or irregularities that would change the outcome of the presidential election. And the third member of our delegation, Democratic Senator Jon Tester, he says it's long past time to end what he called these irresponsible attacks that put our democracy at risk, and for Congress to start addressing serious issues that face the nation. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
If the challenges are defeated as expected, Biden's election will then be confirmed by Congress. Yellowstone County Health Authorities confirming the first COVID-19 related death of 2021. That victim, a man in his 70s, died on Sunday. His death brings the county-wide total from 165 in 2020 to 166 now. Riverstone Health reports more than 14,000 Yellowstone County residents have been infected to date, and more than 12,700 have now recovered. The statewide death toll has now reached 1,036 as county health agencies added another 7 COVID-related deaths. And although the state added another 723 new cases since yesterday evening, active cases did drop by 105 thanks to 823 additional recoveries. And in Wyoming, officials announced another 26 new COVID-related deaths just today. Well, will you get the COVID-19 vaccine when it's available? And also, what concerns do you have about it? Riverstone Health would like input from Yellowstone County residents. It's asking people to fill out an online survey to help gauge public interest. So far, around 3,000 people have completed that survey.
Responses, I'm not sure exactly what the number is, but that's going to be really helpful. We need to understand, first of all, sort of the demand side of it. What proportion of people do we think are going to be really ready to get vaccinated? But equally important, we need to understand from an education perspective what the hesitancy is. What are people concerned about that we can help inform that this is a safe vaccine? You know, the clinical trials, when they were completed, had a very high degree of efficacy. We want to get that word out, and the more people that respond to that, the more information we'll have to work from.
That survey is anonymous and only takes a few minutes to complete. It'll be open through Friday, January 15th on the Riverstone COVID-19 website. Governor Greg Gianforte has taken his first action to shape Montana's response to COVID-19, focusing on getting the vaccine to vulnerable populations. He also announced plans to repeal the state's mask mandate, but that won't happen immediately. MTN's Jonathan Anbarian has the latest.
Governor Greg Gianforte announced Tuesday that his new administration will make a shift in priorities in battling COVID. Gianforte said he plans to revise or replace a number of directives from the previous governor.
Our goal is to make these new directives and guidance very clear. They will be practical and will take into account that while we're in the middle of a public health crisis, we're also in the middle of an economic crisis.
First, Gianforte said the state would prioritize getting vaccines to people who are particularly vulnerable to COVID, those 70 or older, and people with underlying conditions that put them at higher risk for complications. He estimated that 250,000 to 300,000 Montanans are in that group, and said the state will work with health departments and providers to make sure they have access.
This will not be simple. There will be challenges, but we are committed to prioritize protecting the most vulnerable in our communities next.
Gianforte also announced he plans to remove the statewide mask mandate, but only after more of the vulnerable population receives the vaccine and after the legislature approves a bill to protect businesses, schools, and other organizations from lawsuits if they make a good faith effort to protect people from COVID. He said he hopes that will be in weeks, not months.
To combat the virus, I believe providing incentives and promoting personal responsibility are more effective than imposing impractical mandates.
Gianforte didn't announce any changes Tuesday in the state directive that limits operating hours and capacity for businesses like bars and restaurants, but he said to expect an announcement in the coming days. In Helena, Jonathan Ambarian, MTN News.
Gianforte also announced changes to the state's COVID-19 dashboard, including adding data on the number of vaccines administered in Montana. Leaders say about 23,000 Montanans have already received their first dose of the vaccine. Well, swift and certain reaction from the state's largest union today. The Montana Federation of Public Employees president, Amanda Curtis, calling the decision to delay the ability of teachers, school employees, and other frontline workers to receive vaccines unfortunate and a slug in the gut to thousands of heroic Montanans.
So we now are faced with educators and other frontline workers who are exposed through no fault of their own to this deadly virus, being told that they cannot come into work because they have to quarantine, even though their exposure may have come from work, and that they need to use their own sick and personal leave while they're gone. And if they're out of sick and personal leave, they just have to take unpaid time. That's not an acceptable situation for Montana workers anywhere, let alone in schools, where we really need our teachers to be able to safely show up to work every day to keep the schools open.
About half of the Montana Federation of Public Employees, 25,000 members, work in K-12 schools. All right, turning to Chief Meteorologist Ed McIntosh. Ed, mountain snow is what feeds the rivers and streams by spring, and you've been looking into just how much is up there.
That's right. And the easiest way to do that, Russ, is compare it to the average. In fact, we take a look at the last 30 years. You can see areas of southern Montana, a little more on the lean side, especially as we look into northern Wyoming, and then above average as we start looking into especially the north central portion of the state. It's still fairly early into the season, so these numbers are pretty good overall. If the numbers are too low, obviously we won't have enough moisture in the springtime. If they're really high, that could be some indications where we could see some flooding. We could add a little more snow to that as we start looking in through Thursday. Mountain snow will start to move in with scattered rain and snow showers for the lower elevations. We'll take a closer look at all this, plus the short and long-term forecast coming up in just a few minutes.
All right, thanks, Ed. For the first time in 18 years, Castle Rock Park in the Billings Heights will have a playground for children to enjoy. Last night, the Billings City Council saw the master plan for Castle Rock, which includes a host of new amenities, most of which don't have identified funding sources yet. The playground will be the first item constructed on the long list of improvements. Q2's Mitch Legge joins us now with more.
Castle Rock Park, the largest city park in the Billings Heights, will see construction on a new playground this year. It'll be the first time since 2003 that the park has had a play structure on its grounds. The process of creating a new master plan for major redesigns of the park was started in May of last year, and that process is now coming to a close. Funding has been identified for the $400,000 playground, but other projects in the master plan, worth an estimated total of $11.9 million, still need to find funding. The new playground will be similar in scope to the one currently found at Pioneer Park near Billings Senior High School, and once complete, will be accessible to those with disabilities. Other park amenities called out in the master plan include things like an expanded spray park, basketball and pickleball courts, amphitheater, and community events pavilion. Presenters to the council said that private and public partnerships would need to be formed to find the additional money to pay for those amenities. Reporting in Billings, Mitch Legge, MTN News.
All right, thanks, Mitch. And to view the Castle Rock Park master plan in its entirety, you can find Mitch's story on KTVQ.com. Well, here in Billings, the popular fast food chain Chick-fil-A may soon open its doors on the West End. The Midvale, Utah-based developer TFC Rosebud LLC submitted a request for zoning clarification to the city last month. That restaurant would sit on a 1.4-acre patch of land in the parking lot of Planet Fitness on the corner of 24th Street West and Marketplace Street. The planning document describes a restaurant with multiple drive-through lanes, outdoor seating, and a children's play facility. The city approved the zoning request, stating construction can move forward. There's no timeline yet on when construction may start. All right, still ahead on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2. Private viewings are now a reality as the Billings Art House and Babcock look to rebound from the pandemic. We'll tell you about that coming up next. Then a little later in sports, making history as the Billings Senior Girls Wrestling Team prepares for its very first season on the mats.